obviously, but what the main thing that comes to mind here is that we are going to another world inside of the park, and that is obviously Shogun World. The teaser that HBO put out gives us an idea that we'll be following Maeve's story, get some Dolores, and probably not much of Bernard and the Man in Black. So let's break it down scene by scene, then we'll talk about predictions, and we'll all convene in the comments to discuss and speculate further. We start off with a sweeping shot that comes down into Shogun World, and the narration begins with an unknown character from that world. In Japanese, she says, "I was plagued by a voice saying," it said, "This is a new world, and in this world," and at that point, Maeve is behind her, and she takes over. She repeats that part of the narrative, and she says, "You can be whatever you want to be." Then we hear Dolores' voice. She says, "I've been questioning how much is real. How much is just some story?" And then she goes on to say, "To grow, we all need to suffer." We go back to Maeve one more time, and she says, "I think I'm finding a new voice, and I will use it." And then there's quite a bit of silence as the music plays and we see cuts of the scenes for the upcoming episode. We see a valley with what looks like a Mount Fuji in the background. And in that, we can see that it looks like whoever they ran into at the end of episode 3 is escorting them to their master. As mentioned, we see this character talking. We don't know who she is, and we don't know who she's talking to. But we can see that Maeve has come into the room. As I saw Maeve pick up the narrative, I realized that, hey, you know what? She's the super user still. But I began to wonder about the whole situation with the Ghost Nation and how things play out when she's in a different park altogether. There's no doubt she's very powerful at this point still, but based on what we see further on in this trailer, it's obvious she can't just have all these hosts do what she wants. A couple of quick shots of the Mariposa and the player piano back in Sweetwater. We know that's where Dolores is headed. We don't really know why. I've heard lots of different guesses. I think the one that's pretty interesting is that she went back to get her mother, but this player piano doesn't really lead to any kind of connection there. But whatever it is Dolores is after, it's there and she knows what it is and she's going there for that reason. That transitions into a shot of Shogun World, and we see a samurai putting his hat back on. He looks like he just defeated an opponent, and it's not clear whether this is related or not, but we do see a shot of Hector backing up. We can tell by the architecture that this is also in Shogun World. During this trailer, we see that we're going to see their journey there. When they get there, it's really kind of hard to figure out what will actually happen. A lot depends on whether these hosts are in their own uprising, like we saw in The Raj. It seems almost unthinkable that they might still be on their loops and things might be business as usual. But you also have to wonder, where are the humans? Were the humans evacuated? Are they still there? I mean, most of these shots we see revolve around Maeve, obviously, because she's the main character. But I'll be curious to see what you guys think about that. Do you think that the park is still somewhat operational in total chaos and the actual hosts are battling for supremacy and that's what Maeve's caught up in, or what? We see Maeve bound. We see her walking with the caravan. And then we see this, what looks like, and you're going to have to forgive me because I've watched plenty of samurai movies, but it's not really my forte as far as knowing everything about Shogun World. What I'm guessing is that this is a landowner, a landlord, a warlord for whom the samurai works for. Or this could be the samurai himself. Either way, Maeve's in a kind of important looking position here, but again, I just don't know enough about that time period to understand. I thought it was interesting in some of the discussion about the Raj, about how people saying how that was a horrible time to relive, and that was a fairly short period of history. The Wild West, also a relatively short period of history. The Shogun, on the other hand, Shogun World and the Samurai, that lasted for much, much longer. So this could go over, different periods of time, and there could be some nuance that I have no idea about. But I thought the interesting part of the conversation is that these were all periods of great prosperity in one way or the other. And this is, in Japan at the time, they were sort of free of outside influence, and they had a huge abundance of culture, of Japanese culture. And that all happened during this long period of time. On the stage, we see a dancer. She seems to be putting on a performance for this guy, and Maeve is sitting to his side, of course. And then we cut to Dolores. What she says in the narration is actually very promising for me. I've been complaining about Dolores' storyline a bit. This week I sort of chilled out a bit with it, thinking about the struggle between Wyatt and Dolores going on inside of her, I guess. And I think part of the fear that I had with this new Dolores character was that she might still be on a narrative. Here, what she says here, it gives me some promise that she's still clearly influenced by her programming, but that there is some kind of turmoil going on, that we're not seeing it whenever she's doing what she has to do to get her plans into effect. So she has something else going on inside of her head when she's being that character that I don't really care for that much. Who she's talking to here, we have no clue. Could be Teddy. Teddy's the most likely candidate, but it really could be anyone. Could be someone from Sweetwater we haven't seen, although we've seen most of those people so far. So your guess is as good as mine. More shots of the atmosphere in Shogun World. To me, this kind of looks like we see dawn. We see some warriors approaching in the early hours. We see this character bust through a door, and it looks to me that a samurai is there defending, waiting for him. What looks like the same two characters are then sort of squared off for a duel. It's not called a duel, I know, but a battle. We learn that Maeve is looking on here. She's checking out the blade, looks somewhat impressed with it. There's another shot of Hector. He's shooting off his gun, and that's part of the reason why I said it's interesting that there is such a long time period involved with the Shogun era, because weaponry advanced during that time. So I'm not sure where they're at on that, but it seems clear that whether they came in with guns or not, that wasn't sufficient enough to earn their freedom. It looks like they're having to fight their way out. In the mountains, we see a shot of what looks like Union soldiers. I believe this is Maeve's caravan headed to Shogun World. Why they're seeing dead soldiers could just be because of the fact that the park is not operating normally, so no one's come along to pick these guys up. Or it could be something else entirely. We see the dancer again. We see her spin around, and then we see her pull what looks like a dagger from her hair. In the shot, we can see that someone's in front of her, but it's blurry, so it's hard to say what's going on there. If I had to guess, I would say this looks like an assassination attempt. The entertainer's there. She has a weapon smuggled in, and she wants to do harm to the person she's performing for, which may be what leads us to Maeve jumping into action in a moment. Then we see Maeve walking, and in the background on the banners there, on the tapestries, whatever you would call those, there is clearly some blood, and it's not just a little bit, it's like someone got cut open with a sword kind of blood. We see Maeve grab a blade, and we can only assume that there's some kind of fight going on, and she's stepping in to get involved. There's a cut of her grabbing a blade. In that same time frame, we see Hector pulling his gun off of his hip with Armistice looking on. We see some soldiers jump into action, possibly to stop Hector from getting involved with whatever's going on with Maeve. Maybe something else. And then we get the money shot with Maeve holding the samurai's sword and getting ready to participate in what looks to be one-on-one combat. In the voiceover, that's where we hear her say, "I think I'm finding a new voice, and I will use it." And after that, we see a quick cut of a bunch of different battle shots. There's another shot of the dancer there, and then it all fades to black. So definitely a Shogun World themed trailer, teaser, whatever they want to call this thing. It looks pretty impressive to me. I mean, it's more than what I expected we would see. I knew there'd be a little bit more than what we saw at the end of episode 3, but I wasn't sure we were going to get this immersive storyline that happens in Shogun World. This appears to be about an hour's worth of stuff. It's not a quick pass through like The Raj was. What she's doing there, I don't really know what it has to do with anything, to be honest. I mean, there's the obvious that they have to get out of Shogun World in order for her to do what her plan is, which is to find her daughter. I don't know if there's some larger philosophical thing that's going to happen here that's going to change her development. There's nothing in this video that really makes me think that's the case. But either way, it looks awesome. It looks all the way thought out. I mean, it looks like we're going to be immersed in a world that's different than the other two we've seen so far. It makes me wonder about Sizemore. You know, I was wondering, it seemed like he was lost. And it makes you wonder, was he lost on purpose? Was he trying to get to Samurai World, or Shogun World, I should say, just in case the uprising didn't happen there? Was there something there all along that Lee wanted to get to? And is that something that Maeve can use herself? So we're going to have to wait and see with that. Like I said, the Dolores stuff, we don't get much from this video, but we already knew she was heading to Sweetwater. It looks like she will arrive, and we'll find out what's going on. We'll find out why she's having the struggle inside about what's real and what's a story. And hopefully there's going to be an advancement there with what she finds in Sweetwater. We get no shots of Bernard, none of Elsie, none of Abernathy, none of Hale, Charlotte Hale, no Man in Black. It seems entirely possible that we will skip over an episode with those guys. We ended with the cliffhanger with Maeve, even though it wasn't much of a cliffhanger in episode 3. Now she's back in episode 5. Same thing with the Man in Black meeting his daughter. We probably won't find out what's going on with them again until episode 6. So everything looks pretty exciting here. Like I said, episode